Hello, everybody. I'm Phil Brandt, President and CEO of AIM Employers Association, and welcome to This Week at Work.
This Week at Work is the only show about the workplace that offers you front row seats and a microphone, featuring experts in human resources and employment law to bring you practical, timely, and accurate insight so you can more effectively lead your organization. It's Thursday, October 3rd, episode 298. Today, we take you on the journey of an HR department, now 4 people strong, that emerged from the controls of finance. It's a member spotlight shining on the Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida, a well-oiled, process-driven organization that boasts a workforce of 175 employees. We'll talk with special guest Amy Lein, CHRO, about the challenges of maintaining that familial feel with a growing staff, fostering emotional intelligence, a big push towards professional development, and moving to a self-funded benefits program, all on their way to becoming a top employer. All this and more on This Week at Work.
All right, welcome back. Good morning, everyone. Happy to be here with you. We got a great show lined up today. Our friend Bert is not with us. He is out celebrating Rosh Hashanah today. So we wish him a happy New Year holiday, I think it is. Is that correct? Do I have that right, Nick?
Yeah, it is. It's a New Year's, Jewish New Year, Rosh Hashanah.
Jewish. All right. And so Bert, that is well deserved after almost 300 episodes to take a little break from either us or his customers. So we will have him back on air with us next week. But anyway, this week we have Amy Lein with us. Amy is the Chief People Officer at the Second Harvest Food Bank in Central Florida. Good morning, Amy. How are you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing very well, Phil. Thanks for having me.
Great. We are so happy to have you with us. I know it's a very busy time. I can't wait to hear some of the things and share all the good news that we do at Second Harvest with all of our members. But real quick, let me get introducing our poll question today. So our poll question today is, how concerned are you about developing employees skills only for them to leave for another company? That's a big concern. I do hear that sometimes. Hey, I'm not looking to invest in people so they can leave and go somewhere else. I hear leaders ask, are they able to, kind of golden handcuff someone if they're investing in their development and so on. So what is it from your point of view? What's the concern? Low concern to a high concern. It's a draggable scale. Give us your opinion. We'd like to have your participation. And if you have anything you want to add it to the chat, and maybe Amy and I can get to that. So we know we have a lot of things going on as it relates to talent and talent in the workplace. And we had, not that long ago, we were talking about the Great Resignation. And Amy, I don't know if that was something that was an impact to you at Second Harvest, the Great Resignation following the pandemic or not, but many of our members were struggling all across the country with the Great Resignation. And coming out of that and hearing all the news and watching inflation, we've done a little bit of work here at AIM, and I wanted to share some information with all of our listeners here today. Some of it might be things that you've seen from me in the past that's still relevant, and some of it may be very new. So I just want to give a quick overview of that. So the first chart here that I want to share is really a chart from the United Nations, right? So this isn't a political chart for us to be concerned with, but it's a great chart that tells us a little bit about the trend of the working age population. Now, they define the working age population of people between the ages of 15 and 64. Now, many of us don't hire 15-year-olds, but some of our members do, right? Lifeguards sometimes are 15-year-olds. You can get certain work permits to work in certain industries and do certain jobs at 15. And many of us employ people past the age of 65 or 64 also. But when we look at that working age that fits right in between those two bookends, that's kind of the sweet spot that employers are looking for when they're doing most of their hiring. So when we look at that and we look at the trend since 1950, we can see that we were adding significant amount of people, I think it's 20 million people every 10 years to that population band. So that population band continued to expand as we added jobs all across the country. And as we added jobs, we always had a nice influx of population to absorb those jobs. And it kept a really nice, healthy balance. So post World War II, a great balance since 1950. Well, coincidentally, when we look at things with and we look at it and we say, okay, what happened with COVID? And all of us say with COVID, something changed. And it did. And there's a huge coincidence in the flattening of that line that occurs right at or around 2020, right when we were dealing with COVID. And when we look at how flat that line becomes for the next 20 years, if I have that right, and we say, all right, so for the next 20 years, we are only going to add 5 million people to that working age population. Now, this doesn't take into account all of our immigration growth and those types of things, I don't believe. I think it's just the people who are alive and well here and working. So when we look at this flattening that occurs and we look at what we are used to having to absorb jobs, it's no wonder that we're starting to see an unbalance between job openings and our unemployment levels. Now, coincidentally, with our unemployment levels, they're low. But let me break that number down when I say 5 million. So, what that really means is we're going to add 250,000 more jobs in 2025 than we had in 2024. Not jobs, people, excuse me, in 2024. So when we look at that and you break that down to your state, your county, it really starts to get to a number of, many counties are only going to get 15 or 16 more people. And that's if everything was equal. That's if every state got an equal number and every county within the state got an even distribution of these people. And that's really not how it works. And we're happy to have you with us, Amy, coming from Florida, because Florida is a state that has an influx of young people, right? Compared to the state of New York, for an example, that has a decrease of young people, right? So the young population isn't all in one spot evenly across the country. So we have to also look at those population trends. That's another discussion for another day. Now, Nick, if we look at this second slide, I appreciate you showing this. So this is some new data that I've put together. And I had to make some assumptions with this data, but there are some really important factors to consider. And then this gets into some of the discussion that we can have with Amy, you can have with your executive. And that is, if we look at the red line on this chart, that red line is our unemployment line. So these are the number of people, and it goes back, I think the chart starts in 2008 or 9, and unemployment at that time was really high because we had the housing crisis recession. And we're having those issues that occurred at that time. And we look at the black line, and that's the number of job openings, right? So we had plenty of people in that time to select from for the job openings. So an abundance of skill and an abundance of people, and that made hiring much easier, and it allowed us to control wage inflation. Well, as time progressed and baby boomers started to retire right around that 2011 and 2012 timeframe at a rate of 12,000 baby boomers a day. So when that starts to decline and we see that coming down and they're moving out of that working age population and our job openings as our country became healthy coming out of the recession, we start to see a really nice steady increase. And everything then flip-flopped right around 2018-19 timeframe. And for most of us, we can remember things got really difficult then, but it was for a very short period of time, and then COVID was upon us, and everything went out of whack, and we've never experienced anything like that in our lives before, so we tried to manage that. Now, as we came out of COVID, that was the same time the population had flattened, and those two emerged on each other at the same time. A huge coincidence, in my opinion, a huge coincidence. In addition to that, other people dropped out of the workforce, And look at the gap that we have there where I have the blue arrow pointing at the great resignation, right? We had a huge gap of more job openings than we've ever seen with very low unemployment, historic low rates of unemployment. And from my research, the best I can tell is that's the first time we've experienced that since World War II. So when we go back, so most of us who are working today, we've never experienced anything like this. Now, what's really interesting is right as those two lines are getting ready to merge onto each other, and our job openings are coming down and our unemployment is coming up a little bit, we have to say, okay, where are we going from here? And this is really the important assumptions that get made. So if I just take what the Bureau of Labor Statistics says is going to be the number of jobs added between now and 2033, and I look at that and I add those job openings to the current job openings, that's that black line. And it's interesting that that black line isn't a significant difference between the black line prior to 2020, right? It's a continuation if we look at it. If we just drew a straight line from 2008 to the end of the black line at 2033, it's a pretty consistent level of job increases and openings. Now, the interesting thing is the red line from an unemployment standpoint, if the black line does continue to trend up, the red line has to stay flat or drop, right? You can't have both of them trend up at the same time, I don't believe. So it's going to be very interesting to see what lies in front of us. And I think it's pretty reasonable for business owners, HR professionals to predict that we will continue to see difficult times and periods of times in our future. It's going to be very hard to match the skills that we need with the job openings that we have. And it's very likely we may see another great resignation in just another year to 18 months when that job gap gets about 3 million. 3 million more jobs than unemployment. That seems to be the magic number. That's Phil Brandt's predictions. And Amy, I don't know if you have any opinions or thoughts as you look at this graph and what that might mean to second harvest, but for me, it means we're going to have to really take a look at how we use technology, how we engineer jobs, and how we use the talent that we have in the most critical positions that we're going to need and find solutions for other ways to produce our business and run our operations without the same number of talented people that we need today. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because I know we're going to talk a little bit about professional development, and all the more reason to be building your talent within, so that if people have opportunities in the company they're in already, they may be more likely to stay if depending on what the opportunities are out there. But yeah, we work hard as a nonprofit to be lean and efficient. Those are some of the things where they're kind of magical words here that we want. We work in volume, so we need to be able to do that very efficiently. And also, I just think in terms of when we hear about other food banks, there's 200 plus food banks that are part of the Feeding America network around the country. So we know each other well. We compare how we do things. We have friends in St. Louis that we know that also have a food bank. So some of the time we'll hear how many people are in a department and how many people that equals that they're serving. So we're very attentive to how well are we running our operation in terms of the number of people it takes to get this certain amount of work done. So I agree, it's going to become more and more critical.
Yeah, and I know I was you were kind enough to host me on a tour of the food bank just a few months ago, and I was in awe of your operation. Tell us a little bit about Second Harvest, the things that you do, the number of people you serve, and what's most impressive is the number of equivalent meals you provide every single day to the community.
Sure, thank you. And thanks for this opportunity. I'm very honored. So Second Harvest Food Bank of Central Florida, you may live in a community that you say, well, we have a Second Harvest Food Bank, and there are about 30 of the 200 food banks around the country that have Second Harvest Food Bank as a name, and then of course based on their geographic area. Our food bank has been here for 41 years, started by a small group of guys that in their church, they said, we want to get food out to people. And the history is long and really just a large number of people caring about the community. So at this point, we serve 7 counties in Central Florida, and that goes from Orlando, that goes north, south, east, and west to 7 counties. We have 5 locations, so we have 3 branches, and then here in Orlando we have a food production facility, and then our mothership here that we most of the programming happens from here.
That's a pretty expansive area when you think of,
It
5 counties.
Yes,
Is the most recent hurricane caused any additional demands or increases on the
on
second
our food bank.
harvest counties? Yeah.
What happens when we know, at least we have notice, we know a hurricane's coming, we will position ourselves depending on what the forecast is to, if we think we're going to get hit, we position ourselves to be ready for that. We aren't first responders. We wait till it's safe and then we get back to work doing what we do. But we also position ourselves to help other food banks around the state. So we've sent things to other food banks, Feeding Tampa Bay, which obviously serves the Tampa area. There's another food bank in the Sarasota area that we've sent some food and water to. Some of the meals, we don't normally cross state lines with what we do, but I heard yesterday that we sent a lot of things up to Georgia where they
Yeah.
need help. So the food banks are in constant communication with each other around what the needs are. We have sent staff before to help a couple of years ago again, in the Big Bend area where they got hit. So our ops team is always in communication with who needs what and what's going on around the country. So we tend to help each other in regional areas when that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's fantastic. Now, and maybe you said it while I was looking at my notes, but equivalent of 300,000 meals a day
Yes.
provided by your Second Harvest Food Bank.
Yes.
I don't know that I can even get my head around that, but
Sure,
that's the equivalent of a lot of meals.
it is.
So
And
how many people work at
sure.
Second Harvest between your volunteers and your full-time staff, and that you're managing the process for that?
Right. We have right now about 175 employees in those 7 counties at those 5 locations. That 300,000 meals a day, actually, let me speak to volunteers first. We have a department dedicated to volunteers, and food banks differ based on their size and the geographics and who they serve. Our department's pretty big that takes care of volunteers because over the course of a year, we may have 20 to 30,000 different volunteers that come in for any variety of time. They save us from having to hire 30 employees, full-time employees, by the work that our
Wow.
volunteers do, sorting food.
Thank goodness for volunteers, right?
Absolutely. They are a backbone of what we do. It's huge for us. I'm about to lose my train of thought. The 300,000 meals. I just want to give you an idea what that means. So we do have a food production facility that is actually producing meals every day. That's probably around 30,000 of those meals. The food that goes out the door to our feeding partners around those 7 counties, that we have an equivalent to what that means in meals. We have a number of different ways that people are getting access to food. And so those go into that calculation of what 300,000 meals
I mean,
is.
some of the good things that you told me about when we visit. I mean, like you're feeding kids before they go to school, right?
Right. Yep.
Um,
And after
you're
school,
after school before. I mean, that's a great thing. You're helping,
seniors,
those who go on,
seniors, uh,
seniors. Oh,
and I don't mean high
perfect.
school seniors, I mean,
Yeah. Because we do have some limited time. So again, we're feeding lots of people
yeah,
who are
yeah.
in need, and what a great thing. tell the community about something I was impressed with. I didn't expect to see. So we're walking down the hall, and I look through a big glass window, and there it looks to be like a culinary school in there. I go, what is that? Tell us
It's a,
about the culinary school.
it is a culinary training program. We are about to, we have about 500 graduates. We have another graduation coming next month. It's a 16-week program, which includes an internship for each participant, each student. The program is for adults, and it's often people that maybe lost their way in terms of employment. Maybe employment has not been an easy thing for them, or their life circumstances have changed and they need to get a fresh start. Any story you can imagine, we've probably had that.
Now, do
Our
you
students,
charge for that or is it free?
it's free. It's absolutely
Okay.
free for the student. So of course we have private funding for that, sometimes grants, sometimes foundations, they help support that program. Last I heard, I think it's around, I'm gonna say 6,000 because it's either 5 or 8 and I can't remember which, but it's about $6,000 for a student to go through the program. So that, and that's absolutely free to them.
Wonderful. Yeah.
I just talked to the food services officer yesterday. We place about 94% of the students into a job. And then at a 6 month point, 87% are still employed in that job. And we're really changing the future of families. And that graduation is one of my favorites because the children are there, the spouses are there, the grandchildren are sometimes there, and they're seeing their family member achieve something that is so monumental, really, because it's changing their life. And do you want to hear one of the best stories is that after one of our students had gotten a job, paid her taxes for the year, she got a small tax refund and she brought it here as a donation, as a thank you for having gone through that program. She
Oh
brought her
my
tax
gosh, that
refund back
is
as a,
that's a truly thankful person, isn't it?
yeah,
That's just
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Yeah. That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
Now, I want to ask you this next question with an introduction from our chat here. Michelle Wiest, Weiss, excuse me, there's no T, from the gun company. Michelle's been a longtime member of ours, and the gun company is a wonderful company, and they spend a lot of time investing and developing their people. And her comment is, it says, you know the old saying, what if we train them and they leave? What if we don't train them and they stay? And I understand that you and your CEO and the other leaders at Second Harvest are, big into development. Tell us what you're doing, why you're doing it.
Definitely. Our CEO, he can no longer claim that he's new. He's in his third year with us. He came from a food
Okay.
bank in Austin, Texas, and he's been with us 3 years now. Soon after he got here, he told me professional development was very high on his list and succession planning and that sort of thing. So in some ways it's a fits and starts. We've asked employees if you don't have a professional development goal, you need one. And that could simply be, I want to job shadow somebody for a day. So there's no cost to it. I want to see how that job gets done. And we work to arrange that. And on the other end of the spectrum, we have someone who's in operations, who's interested in human resources. We budgeted money for her to go to the state conference where we saw you
Yeah.
recently. She's going
Right.
to go to the state conference next year, and she's in operations, and we're going to pay for that for her to go. So that's more like $1,000 investment for her. And the idea being, we need to develop the talent within the organization. So I do feel we're probably at a younger stage of this than some other places might be. We're still working that through, like what does a formal professional development plan look like? We're not quite there yet,
Mhm.
but we're working hard to make sure everyone has a plan, that there's dollars budgeted, and maybe you don't need any money for it. Again, you might want to just
Right.
see how someone, you might want to just have a mentor from our board of directors or something like that. Um, so we're working hard to make sure each person has a professional development goal and then eventually a professional development plan for
Yeah.
where they want to go with their career.
Yeah, and I mean I applaud you and your CEO in that space. It isn't always about let me send them to training somewhere that might cost a bunch of money.
Right.
Of course, I like that because we train, we're not doing 300,000, but we train 15 to 16,000 people every year. But there's more to it than training, right? It is about exposure, mentorship, and job shadowing, and project assignment. Lots of things that we can do to create development and make better people. And I do love Michelle staying because if we don't train them, the likelihood of them leaving and going to somewhere better is not probably going to happen. The likelihood of them staying with the skills that we don't need as much versus the skills we need more of is true. And then we're left with maybe a group of people that don't have the skills we need, and that can cause our business to suffer as well.
And not a lot of motivation
And
because
not a lot of motivation.
nothing's
Great
happening.
point.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I'll find the
excellent.
motivation somewhere else if
Yeah,
I can't find it here.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, I appreciate you taking some time to share such a good message with all of our members across the country. I'm happy that Second Harvest is a member of AIM. We love working with you. I was so impressed when you gave me the tour of the facility. It was a first-class facility in all ways. I have a safety background, and I did not recognize any real safety hazards from a people development standpoint. I was super impressed in the things you do for the community through your employees and how you run your HR department as well. Hats off to you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That will conclude our program. Nick, I didn't get to the poll question, but maybe we can post that online and we'll share those results online, please.
We can. We do have just a couple minutes here if you want to go over it now.
Okay, let's do that. I'm sorry. I realized we started a few minutes late, didn't we?
Yeah. All right, so let's pull this up
right.
here. There we
So
go.
go again. Give us those results, Nick.
All right, so how concerned are you about developing employee skills only for them to leave, take them to another company? We're at 2.3 on a scale of 5, so we're just a hair on the side of not concerned, but we are still a bit concerned.
Yeah, it looks like when I look at that, I guess is it the far right is not concerned at all?
Yeah, far right is extremely concerned.
Extremely concerned. Okay, well, good. I like the looks of that graph. I can understand there are times when we need to be concerned, and there's ways to protect our investment. And normally people understand that investment, but the reality is we have to be developing the skills so we have the right people in the right place exactly when we need them. And it is an investment, whether it's time, commitment, thought, slow someone else down because I'm doing some job shadowing, all those types of things. We have so many great examples. Michelle chatted in from the gun company, all the way to what Amy's doing from St. Louis, all the way to Florida. There are so many great examples of how we can develop people to be better, right? We can see the charts that I shared, the gap of talent, right? To have that many unemployed people still is a big number to us while it's historic lows still. But the reason that it's low often is due to it's not a good match of skills for what we're looking for. If I need technical engineering, math skills, science skills, and people in the unemployment don't necessarily have that, well, then I'm going to really struggle a little bit. So how do we keep people moving forward? That keeps our country moving forward, and I like that. That's what we're trying to do. All right, we will be back on air next week at 7:30. Burt Garland will be with us then, and until that point, let's go out and be good to somebody. Have a great day.
Thank you once again for tuning in to This Week at Work. If you enjoy the show, please share it with your colleagues, forward our invites, share the link, aimea.org/This Week at Work, or follow or subscribe wherever you get your news and entertainment. LinkedIn, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we're everywhere you are. Don't forget you can be part of the show. Send your questions and comments anytime to info@thisweek.work. We'll see you next week, 7:30 a.m. Central Time. when we discuss what's happening this week at work.